Okay, we are recording.
Okay, thanks. So I'll call the meeting to order. This is the April 27, 2021 meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission for the town of Fairfield. The first order of business is bills and communications. That is our meeting minutes from April 13, 2021. Can I have a motion on those? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We talked about all this before we got started. We have several absences today. And so we do have Commissioner Elliott, alternate Commissioner Elliott, who is sitting in for Kathy Braun this evening. And we have Commissioner Levy, who's absent, who will, Commissioner DiGiacomo will sit in his place, but he won't be arriving until a little bit later, 7:10. Okay, Commissioner Elliott, you are at the last meeting, right, up to speed?
Yes, up to speed.
Excellent. Very good. So the first item then is the meeting minutes from April 13. Can I have a motion on that?
Move to approve.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Francis and a second by Commissioner Noonan. Thank you. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or corrections on those? I didn't see anything. No? Okay. So I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. Good. Okay. So no other comments or questions. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And the minutes are adopted unanimously. That's nice. I can see everybody's video at once. Next item is 1401 Kings Highway, request of 1401 King LLC for 100% release of a $333,027.50 bond pertaining to special permanent improvements in the design commercial district.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went for the record. This site is the location of a 160-unit mixed-use development adjacent to the Fairfield Metro Station, informally known as Trademark 2. It's being marketed as Alto with respect to the residential units. All the bonded improvements have been completed. There is an email in your packet and attached to the staff notes from the engineering department recommending 100% release of the bond, and we concur with that recommendation and recommend its release.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Can I have a motion on this? A motion to approve a release of the full bond by Commissioner Noonan. Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Thank you. So we have confirmation from our town engineer in file. This appears to be in full compliance with our regulations. I don't see any reason why this should be denied. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Excellent, thank you. That's everyone, so nobody opposes and there are no abstentions, which means that the bond is released unanimously. Thank you. The next item is 528 Blackrock Turnpike. It's the review of revised plans for the approved 23-unit residential building. This item was tabled from our last meeting for some additional plans.
Yes, I can go through this. I did send an email late this afternoon with a link to the revisions. If you haven't had an opportunity to see it, we can pull it up on the screen if need be. But again, just to recap, this site is on the corner of Blackrock Turnpike and Castle Avenue. If you recall from our meeting a couple of weeks ago, the applicant's looking to reduce the overall height by taking the gable roof off and going with a flat roof configuration to create some amenity space. And the question that was posed, that we posed for the commission, is whether or not this change warranted a new application. And I think at the last meeting, there was consensus that the new application or this revision did not warrant a new application. However, you did request some changes to make the building read more like a residential structure. So they've gone back to their original combination of shingle and clapboard sidings. They've also introduced some shutters to make it look more residential. And I did speak with the applicant personally. There was a concern about the space, the gathering space up on the roof, and they have no intention of installing any kind of sound system up there and would not be opposed to a condition that prohibits a sound system from being installed. So hopefully the new look kind of addresses the concerns that were raised last time, that it present itself more as a residential building, and that's all I have at this point. And if you haven't had a chance to see the new plans, we can pull them up, but hopefully you've had a chance to look at them.
Yeah, this is good. Why don't we pull them up on the screen just to be certain that everybody's looking at the right file. I'm sorry, I also talked about this all before the meeting started, and I forgot to say it as soon as we went live. For the members of the public that may be on the line in the meeting for the matters that are scheduled for public hearing, those have both been withdrawn. So those two items are the 236 Commerce Drive, which is the application of Pepe's Pizzeria for a one-story addition, as well as the proposed zoning regulation, which was filed by Fairfield University. Both of those have been withdrawn. We don't have any details on whether the applicants are going to resubmit and when those might be rescheduled. So if you're here for those, they're no longer on the agenda. So, all right, thank you. Getting back to 528 Blackrock Turnpike.
Yeah, Emmeline, if you could scroll down to the very last page, page 4, I think has the best image because it's a little bit larger. We can move this around, but I think it's easier to see at the bottom if you keep going. Oh, there we go. That kind of elevation, you can zoom in perhaps because it's hard to see the detail, but the two projecting facades, it's hard to see the shingle detail on the screen, but that's going to be shingles, and then the others are clapboard siding, and they've got the shutters introduced in there as well. So hopefully that's more in line with what they had in their original proposal.
I mean, I kind of like the view. Maybe you can do it here on this view as well, but even on the top, the first page. You zoom in pretty wide and recenter. You can really see the detail in the PDF.
Yeah, I did it already.
If you keep going. Yeah, even further, 140, 150%.
There it is.
Yeah. You can even click 2 more times. Right. So you can see that there are, different applications of siding and shingles, and we have the window treatments now, both at the top as well as the shutters. My personal view is I think this does present much more as a residential feature than not. But getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, I think we need a motion. The motion, and so the motion here would be to approve the revised plan as consistent with the earlier application, the earlier approval.
Move to approve.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Give motion to approve by Commissioner Francis. Second by Commissioner Noonan. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see that. Got a lot of little squares on my screen right now. The motion on the table is to approve. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Commissioner Corcoran, yes, please. Oh, should we make a condition of approval?
I think this is better. I like the original one better. I like the materials. It looks like they've added some cornice work at the top, maybe some iron fences at the top. The shutters are not my taste. I mean, they couldn't possibly close over the windows, but it's better than what we thought.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Francis?
I agree. It's a much more attractive plan. I thank the developer, and I would like the condition of no music from the roof.
Okay.
Consideration of the neighbors because the setbacks are so limited being an 830G.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. So it was, I think it was your motion, Commissioner Francis, so that's an amendment to your motion. Commissioner Noonan, you agree with that?
I'm not going to hold it up. I would personally not be, wouldn't need the restriction. But if the commission feels that that's fine, then I'm not going to hold that up. So I would, unless the rest of the commission thinks it's not necessary, I don't mind having the condition there.
Okay, Commissioner Corcoran?
I can see not having a sound system up there, but I think that people should be able to play their own music within the ordinances.
Right, quietly. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the neighbors and interfering with them.
Right.
Because it's not in scale with the homes, you know, it's 2 stories larger.
On top of them.
I just
Commissioner
want to
Bremen?
be considerate.
Sure. Commissioner Bremen?
Hey, I think that the new design creates a smoother transition between the residential and the commercial at this location. And I think that if the applicant is willing to agree to a condition that there be no sound system on the roof, that's a reasonable condition.
Yeah, okay. So they've agreed with that. I think we should make it clear that we're not prohibiting sound, music, not a sound system, and that they must, you know, simply adhere to the sound ordinances. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any hands or anyone. Okay, so the motion on the table is to approve this with the conditions as stated. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Excellent. And that is everyone. So this is that motion is approved unanimously with no objections and no abstentions. Thank you. The next item on our agenda are new applications to recommend a public hearing. The first is 801 Post Road, special permit application of Samuel Gardner, architect, for additions and alteration to establish a restaurant use in the design commercial district.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Wendt again. This property is on the corner, the southerly corner of the Post Road and South Benson Road. For many years, it was a gas station and repair. It's been vacant for a while. The gas pumps have been removed. The applicant is seeking to make some alterations and establish a new restaurant here called Pizza Co. There is a branch of that particular business in Stratford at present. So it is an addition. It is a special permit and does require a public hearing that would be scheduled at a subsequent meeting.
Commissioner Noonan, motion to approve. Move to public hearing. Very good. Thank you. Can I have a second? Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Thanks. Thank you. Mr. Wendt, do you know whether the former gas station use and renovation entails any cleanup of any contamination?
As far as I know, Mr. Chairman, all the pumps have already been removed from the site. But I'm sure the applicant will make clear what the status of that is during their presentation. I'll ask them to do so. I think there's a representative of the applicant listening as we speak. So I believe that's all been addressed, but the applicant can certainly confirm that during the public hearing process.
Very good. Commissioner Corcoran?
Yeah, I mean, the concern might be the storage tanks underground.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll get the full picture from the applicant, I guess, when we hear the application. All right. But a public hearing is required, so we need to move forward. So the motion is to send it to public hearing. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. That's all 6 of us, so that is moved to public hearing unanimously. No abstentions and no opposed. Thank you. The next is 5545 Park Avenue zoning compliance application of Primrose Development LLC pertaining to a 120-unit residential building pursuant to Section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in an R3 zone.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went again. I don't really have much to add other than what you just read. This is a site that the commission has seen within the last few months. It abuts, just south of the Merritt Parkway, across from the medical office building in Trumbull. The proposal now is for 120 unit residential building pursuant to 8-30G.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Commissioner Noonan, motion to move to public hearing. Thank you. And seconded by Commissioner Corcoran. Thank you. We're getting good with these hand signals. So 8:30G, public hearing required. I don't think there's a whole lot more to say, as Mr. Wentz said. Any comments, questions? Raise your hand. Yes, Mr. Francis.
Was it 120 units when we had it a couple months ago?
No, it was not. If you recall, there was a regulation amendment package submitted at that time that was looking for a density greater than what the regulations permit, but less than what's presently being proposed.
I think it was around, I think it was 90,
It was,
90 or
I
94.
believe it was 80 units, I think. It was either 80 or 90.
Okay. Motion is to move to public hearing. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Thank you. That's all 6. So the motion carries unanimously, no opposed and no abstention. The next item is old business. A and B are related, so I'll call them together, although we don't have to vote on them together, and we likely shouldn't. 3A is zoning regulation amendment application of Fairfield Medical LLC, proposing a new section 12.4.29 inclusionary multifamily residential use with a housing opportunity for workforce housing component. And 3B is 4185 Blackrock Turnpike, zoning compliance application of Fairfield Medical LLC pertaining to a 94-unit residential development pursuant to Section 830G of the Connecticut General.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll recap the proceedings. The application proposes a new section 12.4.29 to create a new inclusionary multifamily residential community use with a housing opportunity for affordable housing component within the design commercial district regulations. Eligible parcels must be within 300 feet of an entrance or exit ramp of the Merritt Parkway or I-95. Such developments must meet the 8-30G standard of 30% of the dwelling units being deed restricted as below market rate units. The design requirements, aside from the locational standard, include a minimum lot size of 2 acres and a minimum lot width of 75 feet, minimum front setback of 20 feet, minimum side setback of 10, rear setback also of 10. Maximum building height proposed is 6 stories or 85 feet, which entails a maximum of 4 occupied stories above structured parking. Maximum impervious lot coverage proposed is 75% and a minimum parking standard of 1.25 spaces per unit and a dwelling unit density of 55 units per acre. So essentially the design requirements are tailored for the development proposal for this particular site. The zoning compliance application or site plan approval that's proposed for this site is approximately 2.3 acres in size, located in the design commercial district. Medical office was previously approved for this site in October of 2015. A 6-story building is proposed with 4 occupied stories above 2 levels of structured parking on the southerly end of the building and 1 level of parking on the northerly end of the building. The height of the proposed building is 72 feet on the southerly side and 55 feet at the northerly side. A total of 94 residential units are proposed, comprised of 26 one-bedroom units and 68 two-bedroom units. The 29 below market rate units are proposed to be distributed as 14 units at 80% area median income and 15 units at 60%. And those units will be 8 one-bedroom units and 21 two-bedroom units. There's a total of 139 parking spaces proposed, or 1.48 spaces per unit. The proposed site driveway is opposite the driveway for the Hi-Ho Motel across the street, and it's in the same location as approved for the medical office building back in 2015. The applicant's traffic report estimates the proposed development will generate 34 morning peak hour traffic trips and 41 PM peak hour traffic trips. That compares to the projection of the former development for the medical office at 60 in the morning and 84 in the afternoon for the prior medical office. The issues raised at the hearing included testimony on behalf of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy that the proposed building height in such close proximity to the entrance ramp would be detrimental to the historic resources of the parkway. And the Merritt Parkway Conservancy offered an alternative massing configuration that, in their view, would be less impactful to those historic interests. In addition, the opposition civil engineer opined that insufficient information had been provided to demonstrate that the drainage system would function properly. And they asserted that there was not enough separation distance between the bottom of the proposed system and the bedrock, therefore proper infiltration would not occur, nor would there be adequate stormwater storage volume provided. The initial plan was not accompanied by soil boring data. On rebuttal to those concerns, the applicant's engineer reported that soil borings were conducted during the proceedings, and the results indicated that there was adequate clearance to bedrock below the proposed drainage system. Additionally, the system is designed to allow for changes should bedrock be encountered where but they don't expect that. The applicant argued that the proposed drainage system is at the same elevation and is similar to the design and location of the system that had been previously approved for the medical office building in 2015. The town engineer has opined via an email that you have received that valid concerns were raised and that satisfactory responses, in their view, have been provided. And the engineering department will continue to review any future field data to ensure that on-site detention systems is designed and installed according to their specifications. The applicant further argues that the historic designation of the parkway is limited to the right-of-way and not to adjacent properties or the view shed impacts in any case are limited. As this commission knows by applications that you've reviewed in the past, that the standards for an affordable housing application differ from a typical zoning application. For the denial of an affordable housing application to be sustained, the burden is on the commission to prove that based on the evidence in the record compiled before the commission, that the decision from which an appeal might be taken and the reasons cited for such a decision are supported by sufficient evidence in the record, that the commission has the burden to prove that A, the decision is necessary to protect substantial public interest in health, safety, or other matters over which the commission may legally consider. B, such public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing. And C, such public interest cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the proposed development. It's important to note under the law that you've seen before and we've said before, it's not necessary for an applicant to submit a regulation amendment as part of a proposal or a zone change in order for a project to be approved, in that zoning compliance is not a prerequisite for an affordable housing application under 8-33. That again is the recap. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but that's all I have at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that that summary. And so I believe that we should take each one of these items up separately. I think we should handle the zoning regulation amendment application first. And so I would entertain a motion on that item. Commissioner Noonan?
I'd move to deny the regulation amendments.
Motion to deny by Commissioner Noonan, 3A. Commissioner Raymond, second? Second. Very good. Okay, motion on the table is to deny. Commissioner Noonan, you want to start?
Yes, we've seen these dual applications for 830G before. As our normal standard, we don't normally approve regulation amendments for 830G site applications, and this is essentially the same one that it would just apply to this this area. And in reviewing the appropriate standards and the regulation amendments, the proposed regulation amendments, I just doesn't meet any of the standards that we would have to utilize to approve. And considering they don't need it, again, they have the 830G statute to fall back on, I would move to deny.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Brayman, anything to add?
Nothing further. I agree with the statement of Commissioner Noonan.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments in that regard? I agree. You know, the 830G applications generally, this one also in particular, is not in compliance with our regulations, and I don't feel like we have to amend our regulations to accommodate Section 830G. Anyone else? Very good. The motion on the table is to deny 3A, the zoning regulation amendment. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Okay, and that is all 6 in attendance. So that motion carries unanimously. There are no objections and no abstentions, and so 3A, the zoning regulation amendment application, is denied unanimously. So the next one, item is 3B, 4185 Blackrock Turnpike, and this is the zoning compliance application. And I'll entertain a motion on this to get us started discussing. Commissioner Noonan?
Yes, I would move to approve the application.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner Brayman. All right. Commissioner Noonan, you want to get started on this one?
So as noted, we've seen applications in this area before. We've approved the medical office use. They now come to us with an 830G. And in reviewing the evidence, I do not see any anything that would warrant us meeting the high burden to show that this application should be denied. With respect to public health and safety, we had a long discussion on the drainage, which our town engineer had said the responses were sufficient, and I concur with that to the extent that I, as a layperson, can. But I'm satisfied with what was presented by the applicant and confirmed by our town engineer. With respect to the historic district, I don't believe that the impact will be of such a weight to warrant a denial. We have shown we have done that in the past with respect to Beach Road. We have shown that we do take historic considerations seriously, and I've done so in this case. But I just do not believe in this instance that the historic interests with respect to the Merritt Parkway rise to a level or because of the impact will be not as high as it otherwise should be to warrant a denial under 830G. So without seeing anything in the record for a denial, I would move to approve.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Brayman?
I agree with Commissioner Noonan. The evidence and the arguments with respect to drainage, while a significant concern that needed to be addressed, was addressed to the satisfaction of our town engineer by the applicant's engineering. And with respect to the Merritt Parkway, Merritt Parkway Conservancy raised also significant issues with respect to the historic Merritt Parkway and the viewshed, and proposed, alternate designs that perhaps would minimize impacts on the views from the parkway. I think in the final analysis, though, the impact on the viewshed does not clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing. The other significant issue that was raised was traffic, and this is obviously a high traffic area. But the dispositive point, I think, there is that there was no evidence that the traffic for the proposed use would be any worse than the traffic that for the previously approved use as a medical office. So in considering the factors under 8-30G, I don't see any evidence in the record that would permit us to deny the application.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners want to have any comments or questions, discussion? Commissioner Francis?
I agree with what was just said, but I find that this structure is taller than we previously approved, bigger. I think the traffic is pretty dangerous coming over the hill, heading south. I don't know. And I find it very offensive to the Merritt Parkway, and they haven't made any effort to redesign it in line with the recommendations from the professional architect consultants. I don't know. I just find it an overwhelming project.
It's pretty big, over 70 feet.
I know with 830G that we're very constrained, but it's massive. It really offends me.
So, thank you for your comments. And before I chime in, does anyone else have anything to say? Anyone else?
And I'll say one more thing if I could. To read the Conservation Commission report of how this land was treated in the last, I don't remember the date, maybe since 14. I mean, the vernal pools were filled in, reconstructed, remade. Two streams were filled in, one on their property, one above it. An 80-foot pile of wood chips, which I well remember, is buried in there. It just makes you wonder about the stability of the soil. But then they got their permit, the town engineer approves. I mean, it's so dichotomous, you just don't know what to think.
Right. I mean, no, that's so I think I'll start backwards with respect to your queries and comments. I think we have to rely on our town engineer and our other departments in the consideration of the engineering and the soil and the drainage and so forth. The plan has been reviewed and approved by our fire department, police department. So fire safety, ingress, egress, drainage from a town engineer. She said that valid issues were raised, and there were satisfactory responses. And I think I'm getting a little feedback, so if you're not speaking, if we could just go on mute. We also have a prior approval on this site of a structure, different use, medical office building, but which essentially sits in the same footprint, but is not as tall. Mr. Wendt, what was the height of the medical office building that was previously approved?
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, what the exact height is. I believe it was a 3-story building, but I don't know what
Right.
It was certainly less tall than what's being proposed here, but I don't know what the exact figure is.
Right. No, I appreciate that. And if I had to guess, I wanted to say something around 50 feet or so, with the 3 stories with the underground parking and so forth. In any event, it's something, I'll call it substantially less than the 6+ stories that we see in this application, which is massive, and there's no doubt about it. There is a different impact on traffic flows and vehicles and pedestrians and so forth when you consider a use. And I don't need, frankly, the traffic engineer to tell me that they're with 94 units with actual citizens living in and breathing in the structure, that there's going to be more pedestrian traffic, coming and going. They're going to go across the street to the hi-ho and the restaurant and so forth. And there's going to be more visitor parking and the likes. There's going to be a different kind of impact on the surrounding area in the neighborhood. And so, with all of that as a backdrop, my consideration of this, under 830G is that, no, I don't think I agree with the comments that have been made. I don't believe that we have valid considerations that rise to the level of a substantial impact, public health and safety and welfare that overrides the need for affordable housing in the town of Fairfield, such that we can outright deny the application. But is there something to be said for the impact to the Conservancy, the Merritt Parkway Conservancy zone, the view shed, the evidence that we heard, such that we might consider an approval with a condition that they alter the design by making the buildings smaller. Does it have to be 72 feet high and 94 units? We can achieve the goals of Section 830G and also the need to expand affordable housing in town, without building the absolute largest building that can possibly sit on the land, and we can do so respecting some surrounding areas and the impact to the view shed and the historic nature of the parkway, which we heard. I find it significant that there is specific mandate and legislation to protect the view, the Merritt Parkway, and that there is such an organization charged with monitoring and abiding by the restrictions and to preserve the historic nature of the parkway and the views and so forth. And I think it's part of what makes Fairfield. So I do think that the historic nature of that is a valid concern. I don't think that taking everything into account, it rises to the level that we can say that we deny the application entirely. But is there something here that can provide a basis for an approval with the condition that there be some modification to make it smaller and lessen the impact? The sight lines were all fine. I thought that the drainage came through, but I put this out there for discussion and consideration. Anyone? No.
Would you be looking for an amendment from Commissioner Noonan?
Ultimately, if the commission is inclined, if Commissioner Noonan is inclined, then yes, it would have to be an amendment to the motion that's on the table, and then Commissioner Brayman would have to agree with that. We did see one alternative put forth by the Conservancy. I don't know if that is that, and I frankly don't think we should be suggesting that the applicant move the footprint of the building. I think they've got their own issues with that, right? I mean, the engineering and all the rest of it. I would be supportive of an approval on the condition that they, remove a story. Or perhaps doing something to minimize the overall height and massing of the building. As a general proposition, I think that the building does look, that the styling of the building looks attractive. Although if not, sort of usual. But that's what I'd like for us to consider.
You know why it took me that long
Commissioner Brayman, comments?
Yeah, I looked carefully at the different alternatives proposed by Merritt Parkway Conservancy. I think at the initial, I think their initial proposal had some modest reductions in massing for the structure, and then there was a subsequent proposal that had a greater degree of reduction in the scale. Personally, I'm looking for an objective standard that we could apply if we were to impose a condition that the scale of the building be reduced. We had a principled basis for that on the Beach Road application. I'd be looking for a similarly principled basis to do that here.
Yeah, well, I think just to sort of flesh out my arguments a little bit, I think we do. I think that the record does have expert testimony from the Conservancy, which outlines the historic basis and also the potential adverse, not potential, the likely. More than a, forgetting the specific word, more than a possibility, but, an extreme likely impact of the project on those historic resources. And then, similarly, we had counter arguments showing us various points along the Merritt Parkway where there is, construction and projects of commercial and residential scale at various entry points to the Merritt. I'm suggesting that on balance, we ought to be considering conserving what we have left, not suggesting that that this outweighs the need for affordable housing, or even that we are suggesting to reduce it by even a substantial amount, right? But some reduction to lessen the impact on the view shed and also the neighbors in the surrounding area and such. So, I mean, yeah, Commissioner Noonan.
Yeah, it's difficult, for us to try and play architect at this point. I think that the Conservancy rightly and wisely, in a lot of ways, tried to put forth an alternative that I think the applicant was pretty clear couldn't work because it moved the footprint to an improper way. And it would have been helpful to get some other alternatives, either from the Conservancy or from the applicant, though I suspect the applicant's position was that the historical impact is negligible, or this is the best we can do, or something like that. It's hard. There are arguments that there's developments around the up and down the Merritt Parkway corridor. To me, is persuasive. Even if you're just looking at the I/O, which I would think would, while older and they're longer, is probably a lot more and quickly and longer visible longer than this will be. Going southbound, I agree, probably will be a quick second. Going northbound, probably see it for a little longer, going that downhill route. The Beach Road, if we can use that as the comparison, it's the only one, the only 5-story building there. You can see it, and it's not a second or two of an impact. It's there while you're in the district. This is, again, obviously traveling, and the impact is how it'll affect you for I would think it's fair to say, a few seconds that you see it in passing it. I'm certainly open to it. I just don't know how. I mean, Beach Street was somewhat easier because we can say just lop off a story, well, 2 stories, for the to what our regulations are, because nothing else was provided to us as far as an alternative. That gets under the tree line. You can't see it. That was easy. This, I mean, right now it's 5 stories. You go down to 4, you probably still see it to some extent. Even I think the conservancy option, you could still see it. It lessened the impact, and I think that's fair consideration. I mean, I just don't. I'm having a hard time wrapping it around just how much will this application, which we have to somewhat focus in on. I mean, mindful of everything else around it, but considering all the other things going up and down the corridor, this application affects the historical value to such an extent to warrant a denial of under 830G. I would certainly prefer that a compromise could, or an alternative be, I think alternative is the better word, be proposed. I just don't know what it is. And I think it's hard for us to be in that position now, because I don't think it's going to be as simple as taking off a top floor like it was for Beach Road, because even the Conservancy was in their own alternative said, well, we're not taking away total number of units, we're just moving it around.
Yeah, no, it's that's fair, and then I mean this is why I wanted to raise it for discussion, see whether or not anyone had any more to add or to offer and or to reject, right, Commissioner Corcoran?
In listening to the applicant's argument that there were other places along the Merritt Parkway where there are buildings that can be seen at various intersections, to me that's not particularly relevant. I don't know how those decisions were made, but the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, they clearly would not be happy with those things that happened, and I don't think we should say that just because it's happened somewhere else, we shouldn't do it here. I'm not sure that's sufficient to overcome the argument for affordable housing, but I think there is a standalone historical reason to deny it if we went with the historical argument.
To deny it entirely?
No, to ask for a change.
No. Well, I mean, I get it. I see the other side of the coin, and you know, to the extent that you know, we otherwise would have to have a basis for denial, right? And the height. So. Okay, Commissioner Noonan, Commissioner Brayman, you don't see a basis here to condition the approval on some reduction in scale?
I mean, as sitting here, I don't, and I don't say that lightly. I understand the historical significance of the Merritt Parkway, but for all the reasons I stated earlier, I'm not just not on board with the idea of the standard we have to do to propose, and how even if you take this, even if you don't consider everything else, and Commissioner Corcoran's point is well taken. I'm not sure how appropriate it should be just to be in a vacuum itself, but regardless, even if you did, I'm just not convinced that it's the impact is such a point to outweigh the need for affordable housing. Again, my preference would be that something be done. It's hard, and if the rest of the commission, if it's 2-4 thing against Commissioner Commissioner Brayman and myself, that's fine, and I'll jump on board with the idea of having an alternate plan be put forth. Again, that would be a preference of mine. As I sit here, I just don't know what it would be, except for come back to us again, and that could very well be the decision we make. Because even as I said, the Conservancy's option was not necessarily cut off the top; it was move things around. And that I don't think we're in a position to do in some respect. But for all reasons, I would stick with what I have. But if I end up being outvoted, that may, as I said, that may be my preference in all honesty. But as I sit here, I don't think the record shows. I don't think the record shows the denial.
Commissioner Brayman?
I agree with Commissioner Noonan's comments. I'm sympathetic to the argument to the American Parkway Conservancy about the visual impact of the proposed structure. Sympathetic to the concerns that it's too massive and that it's not at the right scale for this particular site. I just think it's too difficult for us in the position that we are in with the record that we have to draw the line. And, again, we try to do things by consensus on this commission. I am reaching a consensus on address this application.
Yeah, understood.
Oh,
Okay, then. I mean, the motion on the table is to approve the application.
Commissioner Francis, I think, has something.
Commissioner Francis? I
could
think
we
you're
not
on.
approve it with with the condition to lessen the scale? I mean, not say take off, not say move it, not say take off the floor, just lessen the scale and see what we get back in a few weeks.
I mean, I think that the point that is being made is if not to take to make it smaller, right? To take off a story, to do something that would have an impact on the visual impression, then sort of what is the point? Okay, how do you make it that there'll be no measurable impact on the massing, the scale, the view shed. So I mean, I think I'm persuaded that there really is that the record doesn't support a condition for a modification to the plan. Unless it would be so significant that it would have such an impact. And I don't know that we have the support to do that. Yeah.
You could table it until Commissioner Braun returns. Maybe she'd have a different opinion or something to add. I don't know.
I mean, it's I think we have time. If that was the sense of the commission. I personally do not think that there is any reason simply to table it because we have a commissioner absent who we are the commission, right? So they're
Well, may I ask, did Commissioner Levy or Commissioner Braun ask in any way to anybody for a table? I mean, we have done that in the past, I think. And if they haven't, then I'd say let's move forward. But, we have done that courtesy to commissioners in the past.
Yeah, I can say affirmatively that neither of them asked me.
Okay. No, I think that's fair because if they had asked, we're cognizant of,
Yep.
well, we're very courteous to one another, and courtesies have been extended my way, and I would, if they had said, hey, I'm busy, but I really want to lay in on this, yeah. But if they haven't said it, I would say let's move forward, assuming the commission, as we sit here, wants to.
No, that's fair, and you're absolutely correct. Commissioner Braun specifically asked me to have an alternate sit in.
Okay, there you go.
So I mean, and in light of that, I don't really see a reason that we should table it for because she's absent. So unless there are other arguments substantively, I think we need to move this forward. The motion on the table is to approve. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions or arguments? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the motion to approve, say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? One. Commissioner Francis. The application is approved 5-1 with no abstentions. Next item on the agenda is 1143 Sasco Hill Road, review of preliminary subdivision open space proposal. Mr. Wendt.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Wendt again. For the record, this property is at the terminus of Sasco Hill Road. It's a 20.05 acre waterfront estate. Preliminary plans contemplate a 7-lot subdivision. Section 2.3 of the subdivision regulations requires that a subdivision of 4 or more acres or proposing 5 or more lots provided for dedication of open space of not less than 10% of the area of the subdivision. Section 2.3.9 requires that a preliminary open space review be conducted prior to the review of the actual subdivision application for a recommendation regarding the disposition of the open space. This property, as you heard at the hearing, is already subject to a 6.4 acre conservation restriction in favor of Aspetuck Land Trust. The existing restriction is not a conservation easement in favor of the town, but a private restrictive covenants that were originally intended to maintain the vistas and view of the shoreline. The section 2.3 of the subdivision regulations provides for 3 options for the potential transfer of open space. And since that provision has been enacted in 1997, 35.37 acres have been set aside as subdivision open space. And it's pretty, and again, those 3 options, the 3 options for the disposition of the ownership is transfer to the town, transfer to a land trust or other not-for-profit organization, and the third is to transfer to an association of property owners. And the disposition of those 35 acres has been fairly equally done with basically 13 acres or 37% gone to the town, 11 acres or 31% to an association of property owners, and about 11% to a land trust. In the case of that was Audubon. We had 3 subdivisions that had land that abutted the Audubon holdings. And so Audubon has been the beneficiary of about 30%. So it's a pretty even split on how subdivisions have been conveyed open space. Given the unique nature of this property and the existing restrictions in place, the applicant is proposing an open space dedication to be transferred to an association of property owners within the subdivision. That, again, is an option that's listed in section 2.3.3. The applicant asserts that the proposed open space will accomplish the following objectives listed in section 2.3.1, which is why open space should be set aside. 2.3.1.3 references the need to preserve land as undeveloped open space, which preserves the appearance, character, and natural beauty of an area. Section 2.3.1.5 to preserve land for the purpose of conserving natural resources. And lastly, 2.3.1.6 to preserve and protect particular areas and terrain having qualities of natural beauty or historic interest. Public access along the existing adjacent beach as tide permits will remain uninterrupted. There's no change to that because below the revetment is land that's below mean high water and subject to public access in the public trust. The applicant indicates that portions of the upland area above the beach comprise a coastal meadow habitat that they intend to enhance. The applicant asserts that public access to such a habitat would be detrimental to the bird populations that depend upon it. Furthermore, the existing stone revetment above the beach would create a potential liability for public access. We heard the Aspetuck Land Trust provided support for the proposed open space proposal. They have engaged in productive discussions with the applicant to enhance the existing restrictions over the majority of the existing 6.4 acre restricted area, not just the proposed 2 acres of private open space in order to preserve the viewscape and natural habitat. The potential to enhance the unique coastal meadow habitat is consistent with Aspetuck's Greenway Corridor mission, and they agree that public access would be detrimental to this unique habitat. They expect and are continuing to dialogue, and they expect to have a more formalized agreement in place by the time the subdivision application is formally reviewed by the commission. But in the meantime, they do support the concept that the applicant is putting forth here. With regard to the recommendation of the Conservation Commission that we received to provide a payment in lieu of open space, which is an option under the subdivision regs, the applicant points to section 2.3.8 of the subdivision, which says, quote, such fee may be required by the commission if and when it determines in its sole discretion that there are inadequate areas in the subdivision which merit preservation by one of the methods set forth in section 2.3.3, or that there are other areas in town where preservation would be more beneficial. The applicant's position is that given the identified open space objectives that will be achieved, combined with their working with Aspetuck Land Trust to enhance the restrictions over a larger area in excess of the area that they're required to dedicate, warrants a favorable recommendation to their open space proposal. That's all I have at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. With that summary, I think I would entertain a motion on the recommendation. This is not binding on our commission. We will ultimately see this application come before us at a future date with the full subdivision plan and application, including a specific proposal for the allocation of open space and the specific agreement with the Aspetuck Land Trust. So the motion would either be to favorably or to negatively recommend to the applicant to proceed on the basis that they have put in front of us in this application. It's not an application, in this proposal. Commissioner Noonan?
I would move to approve the recommendation. That's the right verbiage.
Sure, yeah, we can do that. We can work with that. It's a motion to favorably recommend to the applicant to proceed.
Correct.
Yes,
Motion by Commissioner.
you can accept their proposal for a private association ownership of the open space.
Yeah. Can I have a second for that? Commissioner Corcoran? Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Thanks. Very good. Commissioner Noonan, any comments?
Sure. Briefly, with at least maybe working backwards, with respect to the fee in lieu, while it's in our discretion, I agree with the applicant that obviously there's land that can be used for open space. The beach meadow easily fits that description. So a fee in lieu is not appropriate in this case. I appreciate Mr. Wendt going through the options of how open space can be put aside and dealt with. One of the things I know I had to combat myself was the idea of open space being just open to the public, which is not the case all the time. And in learning and being informed more about this, the idea of it going to Aspetuck Land Trust as the caretaker, for lack of a better term, seems to be appropriate with what their plans for the proposed open space would be, enhancing it, protecting it, especially with the testimony that this is a very rare parcel as far as the meadow, the grass, the ecosystem, etc. So I agree with Aspetuck's support as well. It seems to be a very ideal solution, and I would approve the recommendation, or again, whatever the verbiage Mr. Wentz said.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Corcoran?
I agree with what Mr. Noonan said. Also, I think that the applicant's proposal meets the regulations, and therefore we don't need to go further.
Very good. Thank you. Any other commissioners have any? Yep, Commissioner Brayman?
This is an interesting issue that faces the commission because it's such an important piece of property to the waterfront and to the ecosystem. Obviously, a very valuable piece of property. I think that we're faced with a property that already has a really significant of area that's
Commissioner
dedicated
Brayman,
to the conservation.
you broke up.
In favor
Forgive
of Aspetuck.
You broke up a little bit
sorry.
there.
Okay, I was saying that this is a property that already came to us with a significant and large amount of area dedicated to a conservation easement in favor of Aspetuck to be preserved, and the applicant asks that a portion of it be further restricted and given to, as I understand, a private association of the homeowners subdivision. But that the Aspetuck Land Trust, which supports the applicant's view and of course has an interest in the ecosystem and the preservation of the wildlife, is going to be able to get additional protections, not only for the area in question, but for the rest of the conservation easement. While I take seriously the Conservation Commission's recommendation that we take a payment in lieu, I don't know that that's the appropriate solution here, where this is such an important and key piece of land that we have in front of us. And I'm also persuaded by the argument that public access to this particular space is not appropriate because of the impact that would have on the wildlife and so forth. So I agree with what the applicant proposes, and at the end of the day, this is not binding on the commission or the applicant. It's just a recommendation.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. Any other commissioners? I agree with all of that, and I feel pretty strongly about this one. I agree with the applicant here. You first look to see whether there is appropriate land that should be dedicated to open space. And here, to my mind, this is a no-brainer. And then, whether it's feasible. And again, it absolutely is. And we not only is it feasible, but we have a distinguished nonprofit entity that supports the application and also is signed on to take care of it. We're going to get more restrictions, as Commissioner Brayman said, on all the rest of the easement, which will only work to the benefit of the town and the ecosystem and so forth. So I agree. Thank you for your thoughtful comments. Anybody else have anything to say about this one? Okay, the motion on the table is to approve favorably the applicant's proposal here for the open space dedication in the subdivision. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. That is all 6 of us with no abstentions and no opposed. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is business zoning regulation amendments. The application of 15 Umpqua Road LLC to amend sections 12 and 28 of the zoning regulations. This was continued from our last meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went again. For the record, yeah, we concluded the hearing on the 13th. The proposed regulation amendments were submitted to facilitate the redevelopment of a property at 15 Umpqua Road. The special permit application has been withdrawn, as you know, but the applicant is still pursuing, following the amendments for the Center Design Business District regulations and parking regulations, and references recommendations made in the 2019 Transit-Oriented Development Study. So there are several amendments, and I'll kind of summarize them briefly. First is section 12.3.16. The current regulations restrict residential use in the Center Design District to no more than 2 stories and no more than 50% of the total area of any building. The applicant seeks to eliminate those 2 limits and to reduce the minimum floor area of a dwelling unit from the present 750 square feet to 450 square feet. The applicant, for this particular amendment, the applicant points to the following language in the TOD study. It says the 2 restrictions on upper floor residential floor area inhibit the development of mixed-use buildings with retail dining or other permitted uses on the ground floor in 3 residential floors above. Removing this restriction will enable more infill development in the downtown station area and additional housing options serving town needs. With regard to the minimum unit size, the TOD reference indicates that the study makes reference to the then current accessory apartment requirement, setting a minimum of 450 square feet as an appropriate and market supported size for households seeking compact affordable housing. The minimum should be modified in the business districts to match this. And you may recall that in our lengthy discussion on the accessory apartment regs, the commission ultimately eliminated any minimum square footage, at least in the accessory apartment piece. But the 450 as proposed was a reference to the then existing standard in the accessory apartment regs. Section 12.7.4, the present regulation allows a maximum story height of 5 stories or 50 feet. The applicant is proposing to reduce the building height to 4 stories of livable floor area and increase the maximum height from 50 feet to 55 feet and requiring a minimum ground floor height of 15 feet. Now, again, the TOD study references modern construction techniques and desirability of taller building floor heights to accommodate retail and dining spaces means that hard to achieve 5 stories at 50 feet. Modifying the height limit to be capped at 4 stories, but allowing 52 feet would allow for tall floor-to-floor heights required for high-value spaces while maintaining the overall appearance of building massing and height to limit that closely matches the existing context. Next is section 12.7.5.2, which is the present limit on total floor area is 200% of the lot area or a floor area ratio, an FAR of 2 times the lot size. The applicant is proposing to raise that total floor area to 300% of the lot area or an FAR of 3. The TOD study, again, includes reference or language that our current regulation has a maximum lot coverage of 90%. So this requirement functionally means that a building developed at the maximum lot coverage can only be 2 stories tall rather than 5 currently permitted in the district, or the 4 stories that the study recommends. The study recommends increasing the FAR limit to 3 to enable development of buildings in the 3 to 4 story range. This scale is consistent with existing building scale and the goals of the walkable and vital downtown. Next is section 12.7.6.1. The present regulation requires a minimum street line setback of 10 feet unless the street is 100 feet or more in width, in which case the street line setback can be 0. The applicant proposes that for properties fronting on Umpqua Road or Sanford Street, the street setback can also be 0. The next setback proposal is 12.7.6.1. The present regulation allows for a 0 side yard on one side and not less than 10 feet on the other side. The applicant proposes to allow a 0 side yard setback for both sides for properties that frontage on Umpqua Road. Section 12.7.6.6, the present regulation requires that buildings that exceed a height of 30 feet provide additional setback of 1 foot in addition to the applicable setback for every 3 feet that the building exceeds 30 feet in height, and the applicant proposes to eliminate this section. So those 3 setback proposals that I just mentioned were not specific recommendations of the TOD study. The applicant is asserting that the setback proposals are consistent with the existing built environment and would maintain a cohesive streetscape. Last proposal is parking, section 28.6.1. The present residential parking regulation for transit-oriented design overlay is the lesser of 1 space per bedroom or 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. The applicant proposes the lesser of 1 space per bedroom or 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit. And that's consistent with the recommendation of the study that the commission should monitor, continue to collect information on residential parking utilization to see if such a reduction might be warranted for residential use downtown. I will note, however, though, that we currently, the property, there's only 1 TOD overlay downtown presently, and that's the former Knights of Columbus property under development on Ocoa Road. So, and there's also a provision in the regulations presently that gives the commission the flexibility to reduce the residential component parking by 50% or to 1.5 spaces per unit. That's a lot of information. I know that this warrants probably some further discussion in that, in order to achieve any kind of building, you've got to meet all of these requirements. So in order to get a 4-story building, or you're going to have to both meet the lot coverage standard, the FAR standard, setbacks, and parking. So it's a combination of all these things that need to be considered in an overall development. In summary, Mr. Chairman, or briefly, were the regulation proposals.
Appreciate that. It's a good summary, and it's helpful to sort of just put in perspective what is now in front of us. We don't have an actual proposal for a development on a specific parcel. These are proposed regulation amendments, which would be effective and cover the entire, commercial district in the center design district, which stretches from, remind me, we're talking about Pine Creek.
From Beach Road on the east side west to Bungalow Avenue, which is basically a block and a half west of Mill Plain Road.
Right.
But you're correct. You're absolutely correct that while there was a special permit proposal for a specific parcel, what's proposed in these regulations would apply within the entirety of the district.
And so, my personal view is that, and I'm sorry to getting out in front of this one, is that the significance and the impact of these proposed regulations would have it bears our due consideration, and I would suggest that we consider these in a planning session, spending some additional time understanding the impact. We saw a proposal as to how the regulations would be implemented on one lot, 15 Umpqua, but how those amendments would take shape and impact development up and down this corridor, I think is something that I am not, I can only imagine, but I think that we ought to dig into, and recognizing that, the applicant now is a developer who has an interest in seeing some amendments in order to, move developments forward. But, we need to, I believe we ought to spend more time with this. And I don't think we ought to do it in, an executive session in a regular meeting. I see Commissioner Noonan's hand go up.
No, I agree. I think this is much like we took the time with the accessory unit regulations. This is probably much more influential with the downtown. And I think rushing through would be a disservice. I would move the table and to set this up as a planning session, again, like we did with the accessory unit regulations, so we can take our time with this and consider the not just the regulation amendments, but thought I had was how the TOD overlay is currently set. So there's other things to consider, not just the regulations, but maybe other options and alternatives as well that may not be put forth by this applicant. So
Right.
I would again move the table and schedule a planning session.
Excellent. And Commissioner Brayman, second.
Yeah, I second. And I would just add that, the applicant raises an important notion that there's recommendations in our TOD study that we amend our regulations to better serve downtown. And the idea of moving this to a planning session and perhaps even having the commission be the applicant for a text change that would implement some changes to our regs recommended by the TOD study, I think is a good idea that deserves attention in a planning session.
Yeah. Okay. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Francis, you're muted.
I've become aware in talking to people how unaware they are that such things are going on. It just amazes me. I'll tell them what's being proposed and they go, we shouldn't do that. The whole town is 2 stories, and they're just shocked. I hope the patch at least has started to do a good job of what's coming up, and people, and really active, alert people, working people, they're just busy and they just don't know. And we've had so many emails on this issue about the character of downtown and preserving it, and there's no parking and it's extremely congested, and stop all this development. I've never seen so many emails on one topic. And I think one of them said, okay, build it, and the other 40 were appalled. And with lots of good reasons about congestion, no walk signals, the 3 schools, the 3 condos and apartments.
Okay. But we don't have that application in front of us.
Right. But I mean, that kind of issue.
Well, those I think are all issues that we ought to take into consideration when considering amending the regulations that would apply to the entire corridor, right? Whether there are pedestrian walkways and signals and so forth. I think those are all valid.
Just, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to looking forward, we've already begun some of the anticipating that you would want to have a discussion like you're talking about setting up. We've already done some legwork to get some visual exhibits for you in terms of the whole of downtown, with some aerials that kind of give you the representation of what the applicability would be, and some examples of some of the more prominent or larger buildings downtown, and what they look like, what their heights are, what their FAR calculations are, so you've got an idea. So we can give you a visual idea of what an FAR of 2 looks like, what an FAR of 3 looks like, and that type of thing. So, and how that might apply more broadly. So we'll be ready once we can get a date, and I'll follow up with an email likely tomorrow to try to set some prospective dates. Given our hearing volume, it might be best to do it on to do this as an extra session. So with your indulgence, we will set out an email with some dates if this is where you're going. And I just also wanted to note for the record that Mr. DiGiacomo has joined us in.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was going to have him come in on the next item.
No problem.
All right. Commissioner Brayman.
Just one comment on the summary. Jim and Emily, I thought it was particularly helpful that you pointed out that we have the discretion to vary the parking requirements by up to 50% in dwellings in the commercial zones on a case-by-case basis, right? So that's something that we could do without varying from the regulations, but perhaps there is a tweak to the regulations that's in order in terms of parking in downtown. That's one of the many things that we could consider at the planning session.
Very good. Excellent. All right. So, and we should also communicate, clearly to the applicant that, we hope that they see that we're taking this seriously, moving forward, investing the time to consider this, and we're going to work with all due haste here to come back around to it. All right, so with that, the motion on the table is to table the item. Any further comments, questions, or concerns? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Very good, that's all 6, so that motion carries unanimously, no abstentions and no one opposed. And now we have Commissioner DiGiacomo, welcome, and you'll be sitting in for the rest of the evening for Commissioner Levy. Now we have 7. The next item on our agenda are compliances and coastal site plans. The first is 1401 Kings Highway, a zoning compliance application of 1401 King LLC for an overall sign plan in the design commercial district.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went again. So 1401 Kings Highway, we referenced this earlier this evening on a bond release. This is trademark 2. The plan calls for a prototype wall sign package that includes halo lit channel letters for the retail and commercial tenants on the ground floor. All the tenants will have to have this consistent sign style, and they submitted plans showing where prospective signs might be located. They're also proposing an identification sign proposed on the garden wall that's on the corner of Kings Highway and Ash Creek Boulevard. The sign location was indicated on the original site plan for the development that you saw. They indicated a sign location but didn't have any specifics. But now we have that proposal. The regulations do require that the street number be included on that sign, and the applicant has agreed to do so either on the sign or under it on the wall. But otherwise, it is our opinion that the sign package is consistent with the sign regulations and represents a unified design. So what happens is if you are in agreement with the sign plan, then any subsequent tenant that meets that plan doesn't have to come back to the commission for a separate permit as long as it's consistent with the sign plan. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion on this. Commissioner Noonan, you're on mute.
I would move to approve. And Mr. Went, do we need to have the street number as a condition, or is that going to be part of this application?
No, I would recommend that would be an appropriate condition.
Okay, so I would move to approve with the condition that the street number be placed on the sign for our regulations.
Excellent, thank you. Have a second? Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Very good. Does anyone have any other comments or questions on this item? Seems pretty straightforward, and the condition is appropriate. No, seeing none. Okay, ready to vote. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. And that is all 7 of us. So this motion is approved unanimously with no opposed and no abstentions. The next item on our agenda is 525 Tungus Hill Cutoff, the zoning compliance application of Chip's Family Restaurant for seasonal outdoor dining in the design commercial district.
Okay. So Chips, I assume you know, familiar with the shopping center location where Chips is located. They're proposing a 900 square foot outdoor dining patio in an area that's an existing lawn between the building and Tungus Hill cutoff. They're proposing a permanent frame with a retractable awning to provide shade and weather protection. On April 1st of earlier this month, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted a variance for the street line setback for that awning, as well as the required number of spaces for the new patio. And they gave due consideration to the fact that there are 210 parking spaces within this parking lot. This is not, this is proposed essentially as a kind of a permanent add to our outdoor dining list that's subject to annual approval with the typical conditions. It's not a a temporary COVID permit. They have such a permit for other opportunities that they will relinquish once they can establish this. So this would go to the annual renewal. So if you were to consider it, I would recommend it be subject to the same standard conditions, that the annual renewal, that the furniture is removed in the off season, and no outdoor sound system in the dates from April 1 through the end of October as the typical season.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Noonan?
I'd move to approve with the conditions as outlined by Mr. Wendt.
Thank you. Second? Second by Commissioner Corcoran, thanks. Commissioner Noonan, any comments?
No, with the variances and it looks like no reason to deny with the conditions that we put on the record. And are those the only ones that are normally applied, Mr. Wendt, or are there others potentially? Or
The standard conditions are the season's April 1 through end of October, and subject to annual review. No outdoor sound system, and the furniture is removed in the off season.
okay, nothing more. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Corcoran?
I'll be glad to see the ugly outdoor area they have right now being removed.
Cleaned up?
Yep.
Yeah. If you zoom in on page 5 of the plans where they have some photos, the awning with the chairs in sort of the center of the page looks like it's got, I don't know if it's intended to be.
Maintain any speed that you set over 20 miles per hour.
Okay, thank you for muting. Zoom in, if you would, Emmeline, on that image that's sort of in the lower half of the page, down. Where you can see the floor and the chairs. Yeah, that one. All right, so that's not intended to be a visual depiction of what this is going to look like once it's built with a wood frame floor and everything, is it?
No, I don't believe so. I think this is going to be a concrete patio, and that's just I think that's a picture that comes from the company that makes this branded
Awning structure.
So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of more to look at what the awning kind of looks like from underneath than it is a depiction of this. That's not a picture of this site. The picture to the right is kind of a depiction of how that would play. I mean, there's some shrubbery there that they might need to remove.
Yeah, that was my next question. I mean, if you like blow that up, I mean, that's basically just all underneath the awning, right? All of that needs to be or would be removed in favor of an outdoor terrace.
It's going to be a simple concrete patio with tables and chairs, and that's just a Photoshop of what the awning is intended to look like against a photo of the existing building.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And what I don't think I saw was a sketch of what that is supposed to look like after the, when it's complete. Right? Number of chairs. Usually we see how many are going to be where,
If you look at the survey blow up there, if you could scroll back there, Emmeline, they're just kind of showing the awning in the patio. We're not regulating the number of seats. It's by patron area, so it's a 900 square foot patron area. They do get the first 150 square feet at no charge for parking, if you will. And the balance is what was waived by the ZBA, but yeah, clearly the existing landscaping that's adjacent to the building will have to be removed in order to support the construction of this existing patio or proposed patio.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Very good. Well, definitely support, more outdoor dining, particularly in this geography. There's not that much available in the immediate area. Have to go a little further up Blackrock Turnpike. So all good. Any other questions and comments on this item?
Is the roof going to be permanent or taken down?
I understand
Sorry,
that
I didn't hear what you said. Is the what going to be permanent?
the roof, so it appears to be retractable.
The frame is permanent, but the awning is retractable, so they can.
Okay. So it's sort of permanent. The bushes won't be back.
No,
bushes as seen in that picture will be removed. Yes, it remains to be seen what, knowing this landlord, it wouldn't surprise me if they did some additional landscaping forward of the proposed patio, but it's not shown on the plan.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions, comments on this? Okay, ready to vote. So the motion on the table is to approve with conditions as recited by staff and in our usual outdoor dining conditions of approval. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Okay, and that's everyone. So that's motion carries unanimously with no abstentions and no one opposed. Thank you, everyone. And I think, oh, we have one more. 788 Old Field Road, a coastal site plan application of Bertolan Paul pertaining to the construction of a two-family dwelling in the B zone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take this one. Jim's talked enough tonight. So, so this is a 10,486 square foot lot, and it's already pre-existing in terms of construction on this site. There's a single family structure that's on the street side, as well as a detached garage and a shed that extends closer to the marsh area than what the proposed duplex will. Because this is a residential B zone and the lot is large enough, a duplex is permitted on this site. This is in the flood zone, so the proposed construction is going to meet the AE 11 plus our 1 foot of freeboard requirements in terms of the site design. They did work with Bill Kinney and Associates to do a coastal site plan analysis, and they did develop a coastal site plan planting plan, which is going to remove some of the non-native Phragmites towards the rear property line and then replace with some landscaping that provides both habitat value in terms of shelter and food source. So overall, it's a standard duplex plan, and they are implementing all of the required soil erosion and sedimentation controls that's going to help protect that adjacent coastal resource, which is the tidal marshland, and farther away Pine Creek that kind of winds around the very the now town-owned parcel that's adjacent to the back of this site. So if you have any questions, that's it. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the summary. So, I mean, overall, I believe the finding is that there's no negative impact to the coastal area plan, right?
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Noonan?
Move to approve.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan. Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Thanks. Commissioner Noonan, any comments?
No, nothing based on our staff opinion and recitation of the facts.
Commissioner Corcoran?
No, nothing further. I agree.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other questions, concerns, or comments on this application? I think this one is it's pretty straightforward. Appreciate the diligence and work, Ms. Harrigan, and the summary and conclusion. Okay. Hearing and seeing none, the motion on the table is to approve. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Excellent. That's it's all 7. So that is approved unanimously. No one opposed and no one abstaining. And with that, we move to public hearing, but our 2 items on for public hearing have been withdrawn. And so we've come to the end of our agenda this evening. So thank you everyone very much for attending. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.